Welcome to Real Coaching Radio, the podcast for coaches by coaches. We are here to teach you how to get the most out of your clients and yourself. This is where beauty meets the beast, brains meet brawn, and science meets, well, bro science. Welcome to Real Coaching Radio. Welcome to today's episode of the podcast. Today, me and Mark, we talk about the work-life balance. What is the work-life balance? Does it even exist? And how to attain the best one for yourself. Ultimately, it comes down to your values. What do you value? What are your priorities in life? We always have this internal compass that guides us along this path called life. And that is going to be the thing that determines what our work-life balance looks like. So don't be afraid and don't be ashamed if you want to spend more time with your family. That's a good thing. Don't be shamed or afraid or feel like you can't love the job you do and spend all of your time working. It's all individual. Just know that there's a trade-off with everything. But without any further ado, let's get on with the episode. So, Marky Mark.
My sister calls me that, or used to call me that.
Was he in a band? Was Mark Wahlberg band? Was he in a band?
Yeah. Back in the day, wasn't he?
Has he been in prison?
Oh, he looks like that.
He looks like he's been in prison. No pain, no gain. So, following off from the Mark Wahlberg thing, did you, and we spoke about before, when you go on the internet and you see, follow this person's diet, follow this person's training routine. Did you see that follow the Mark Wahlberg's day?
No.
So, he gets up at something stupid. He gets up at 2 a.m. Let me see if I can get it up quickly.
Maybe.
Let me see if I can get it up. Mark Wahlberg's day. Let's see what it says.
Because The Rock has a stupid one as well, didn't he?
Yeah.
Similar.
So, Mark Wahlberg's diet and workout plan. Obviously, it's not going to actually be his diet and workout plan. I hope you all know this, but we'll kind of talk you off of it. I have no idea what website this is on, so this may or may not be legit. But after filming one of his films, or on the lead up to filming one of his films, this was his daily routine. At 2:30 a.m., he'd wake up. At 2:45 a.m., he'd have prayer time. 3:15 a.m., he'd have breakfast number one. The bloke's a hobbit. And then 3:40, do you want to know what his breakfast is?
Yeah.
Steel oats, peanut butter, blueberries, and eggs.
I think the fact that it's called breakfast number one.
This is the interesting bit. There's 3 breakfasts, mind.
See, I have an issue with that. What do you mean it's 3 breakfasts? You're just eating.
I on a side note to that, I find it funny that people assign meals to certain times.
Yeah,
if you have eggs, it's breakfast. You can't have a full English at any other time apart from before 11 o'clock.
Yeah, I don't people look at you like a madman if you have cereal at 8 p.m.
Cereal at 8 p.m. is better. And then he goes on to his workout is 3:40 to 5:15. Workout number 1. Okay. 5:30 a.m. he has breakfast number 2, which is a protein shake, 3 turkey burgers, and 5 pieces of sweet potato. 5 pieces of sweet potato. How big are these pieces? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a bit.
And then the 6 a.m. shower, 7:30 golf, 8 a.m. snack, and his snack is 10 turkey meatballs. He goes in a cryo chamber at 9:30. Breakfast number 3 at 10:30 a.m. So by 11, the bloke's had 3 different breakfasts and lunch. He's gone to the gym at least once. He's prayed. He's played golf.
To be fair, the fact that he plays golf, he's gone down in my estimations.
Yeah. Oh, golf.
I've lost a small amount of respect for Mark Wahlberg.
Golf's not really it's what you do when you get rich. So hopefully soon.
It's what you do when you get rich, or when you get old, or boring.
Whichever comes
or a combination of.
So based off of that routine of getting up at 2:30 a.m., it leads us on greatly to what we actually want to talk about today. And what we want to talk about today is the work-life balance. Now,
what's that?
the work-life balance. Have you ever heard of that?
Never come across that, mate.
Never come across that.
No.
So in the fitness industry, if you are a coach, or even if you're not a coach, you can kind of you can respect this a little bit, because if you are someone who just gets trained by a personal trainer, a lot of times it's either before or after your normal work schedule. So we kind of are in the gym. I mean, when I first started, I was in the gym at 5, so getting up at 4:30, and I'd be still at the gym like 7:30, 9 o'clock at night. So in that time, I would train within the day and stuff like that. But our work schedule around being a coach, around being a personal trainer, is a lot different to a normal person's, say, 9 to 5 work schedule. Or that normal kind of, even if you work in construction, like you've got a set time you're normally at work. So in this industry, I find a work-life balance, is it impossible to get?
I think... I mean, first of all, I think we need to try and identify what is a work-life balance. Like, is it a thing? So, and what I mean by that is it this thing that everybody should adhere to, or does it? Or what I'm trying to get at, does that look differently for each individual?
So I personally think that the work-life balance, it's got to have come from someone trying to sell you shit. Personally, I think that's probably where it's come from.
Yeah.
And someone's probably tried to sell you an idea of something to sell one of their products, whatever that must be. And from there, I reckon it's kind of drifted on.
Yeah. Because I mean, like, what's like, I genuinely don't know the answer to this. What is like, if you're an employee, what is a normal working week? Is it like 37.5 hours? Is that the thing?
So
that number kind of rings a bell to me.
That rings a bell to me. So, and
mate, I do that in 2 days.
So Jess works in HR, so it would have been interesting to actually ask her. But unless it came from HR and come from like the fact that workers need time off and like obviously like workers' rights and things like that, which I do agree with, like it to a certain extent, like everyone kind of needs a set hours and people have contracts and things like that, which makes a lot of sense when you're in a quote unquote normal job.
Mm.
And I mean, have you ever been in like a 9 to 5 job?
No. And it's no.
See, I kind of have. So before this, I'd done a little bit of electrical work.
Yeah.
But I was on call, so
yeah, it's not really, is it?
No.
Mate, if I worked 37.5 hours a week, I would be bored out of my brain.
So that's why I think this work-life balance thing is quite interesting, because when you are an employee of a business, when I worked at my old job, I literally was longing for the weekends, longing for the evenings so I could come to the gym and train, and longing to see my mates, longing to get home and see my partner, and just not want to be at the job I was at, basically. It was okay, but it wasn't where I wanted to be. So my thought when I talk about the work-life balance is, I want one then. Like, I don't know what it is, but I want one.
Yeah. Yeah. So maybe it's maybe it's more along the lines of, if you're in a job that you hate, you really want a work-life balance. But if you're in, if you think about that podcast we did on passion, if you're in a job, and we both said that kind of, we're fortunate that we're in a position where we get paid for stuff that I really enjoy doing.
Yeah.
And to a certain extent, there are other things that are coming into play now as I get a bit older, but for a long, long time, and still even now to this day, like, exercise and training is my life. It's almost my identity.
Yeah. And I think we are outliers with that. We are not the norm, because like a lot of people who don't necessarily enjoy their job or long for the weekends, like I feel like a work-life balance probably is important at that point, because the difference between, I think, us and someone who works a 9 to 5 is everything that the work that we do, it comes from us. We only do what we have to do because we're our own boss, and we are driven by that kind of passion and driven by the job that we really do enjoy.
Yep.
So it's like that almost is our life. Do you know what I mean? So the split of a work-life balance is almost gone when you take it into the kind of realms of your work is your passion, I guess.
Yeah, and also I think like if you're in a position that we're in, like the sacrifice is different. Like if I was to work for somebody and I was an employee and I just didn't fancy it that day, I could just be like phone up and be like, I don't really feel very well.
Yeah.
Like
I've done that.
Or got coronavirus.
Yeah.
Not going to come in for 2 weeks.
Or,
like the position we're in, like, well, but and if you did that, you still get paid.
Yeah.
Like the money stops at me.
Yeah.
Like if I don't put in the work, I don't get paid.
And that's so that's the thing when you join this industry, for you, when you come into it, did you soon realize then that this work-life balance thing, it doesn't really exist in what we're doing here? Or when you first started, obviously when you're younger, I feel like you kind of it was weird, like up until I was about 22, I felt like all I wanted to do was just be with my mates and chill out and just do shit on the weekend, play rugby and like not really worry about work.
Yeah.
But then I wasn't in this job and I wasn't kind of chasing a passion, chasing a career. So I don't know whether for you maybe a kind of, if it would have happened near the start or if it took you a while of being in this industry for you to realize actually this is everything I put in is what I get out.
Yeah. I think my I have this conversation with clients all the time, a lot, certainly along these lines. I have clients that come to me, and I am going somewhere with this. I'm going off on a tangent, but I am going to bring it back, and I am going somewhere with this. I have clients, and when I do consultations and stuff with clients, and we have conversations. They're kind of like, especially they're competitive, and I said this on one of the other podcasts. Like, if they're a competitive individual, generally they say, I'm an all or nothing person. I'm either all in or I'm all out. And when it comes to training and exercise, like pretty much 99.99999% of the time, I would try and get clients to move away from that mindset because we know that consistency and like long-term structure is going to have an impact on them achieving their results as opposed to all in or all out. But when it comes to me personally, it's a classic case of do as I say and not as I do. Like in my own work life, I will literally just work until I physically cannot work because I'm that tired. Like there's been multiple times in the last, certainly the last 6 to 7 years, as I've become more and more time poor, there has certainly been times in that 6 or 7 year period where I have worked more than 85 days straight without taking a day off. And what I mean by working 85 days, I don't mean like getting to the office at 9 and clocking off at 5. I mean starting at 6:30 and finishing at 11 p.m.
Yeah.
Like, I generally just run I take a day off when my body's just like, nah.
Right. So this is where it gets really important for everyone to understand, because if you're someone who is in the industry, you'll probably kind of relate to some of that. You'll definitely relate to the fact that we work long hours, it's all what you put in. If you're self-employed, you'll relate to that. And if you work for a job and a job that you're not necessarily fond of, or even a job that you're just started and you're just finding your way, it doesn't necessarily need to be something you're not fond of. You've just got a job because that's what you needed to do. Do you know what I mean? Like we all have things we need to do. People don't necessarily know their passions. People don't necessarily know what they want to do. So they're doing something because one, it probably pays well and it kind of gets them through and there's a career path there, which is all brilliant. And it's something for me, which I really respect anyone who has a job which they are just trying to work through, and they've got a job because they need to pay bills and they need to do that because life does happen. The one benefit of being a human is we genuinely get to choose what we do with our time, what we do with our money, what we put our effort into. And I know it sometimes doesn't feel like that when we feel like we have to do a certain job because we need the money coming in. But that's where we have weekends and evenings to kind of explore our hobbies, explore our passions, and to go elsewhere. And the reason I say that is because when it comes to you being in one of these jobs and you hear Mark saying he works from 6:30 to 11 and you're thinking, what a fucking idiot. Like, why are you doing that? Because you're relating it to the job you're in now. But think about any time you've had to study for an exam or any time you've had to put in extra work to kind of get a qualification or maybe like kind of branch out somewhere else. Maybe you're in a band. Maybe you've got like your own little project going on. You'll put work in on that when you come back from work and you'll be doing that. Now, technically, if you made money off of that, that would be your work. But just because you're doing it because you enjoy it, it's exactly the same position that we're in.
Yeah.
We just get to do it all day, every day.
Yeah.
And that's probably the one difference is that people think when we think work-life balance, they think work.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But
I will say though that so when I first started working in this industry, and this is one thing that kind of grinds my gears a little bit now. And Kate and I have this conversation. We've had this conversation multiple times. Obviously, so we run a gym, own a gym, also own and run a training provider. So provide people with qualifications to be able to start working in the industry. So I have a fairly large exposure to people who are new to the industry. And nowadays, when I first started the industry, like Instagram wasn't a thing. I don't know if Facebook was a thing. It may have been, or if it was kind of like just coming to surface. Online training certainly wasn't a thing. And now it is. Everyone's just like, oh, I've been to the gym for 3 weeks. I'm now an online trainer. And also think they have the right to be able to do that. And again, like I had this conversation with Kate a lot. Like Kate and I, when we first started working in the industry, mate, for like 4 years, I was a PT. I cleaned treadmills. If you were to ask a new personal trainer now to like, oh, can you go and clean some kit? Like, most of them are just like, it's not my job. I don't do that. They're just, yeah, yeah.
There's
winds me up, man.
There's no putting the time in. Like there's not earning your stripes as such.
Nah.
That's the difference with the changer, though, isn't it? It's change.
Yeah.
Like, the industry's going in a weird direction.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but like I think good, honest, hard work, reliable people are hard to come across.
Yeah. So that work ethic that transfers into almost all of your life.
Yeah.
It is. I think you're right, and I think. Part of me thinks that's maybe because of the lack of struggle that we've had to go through.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like people have it really easy. They're just like, oh, I've got a runny nose. Probably going to take the day off.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
My child was born at 5 p.m. I left the hospital at 2 a.m. I was coaching at 5:30 a.m. Like, I don't care if you got a runny nose.
So that part of this is the level of dedication that goes into trying to create something which is more than just the norm. And that cost of ambition, what we've said before, is like, what are you willing to sacrifice? Now, this sacrifice doesn't have to be a physical thing. It doesn't have to be like money. It doesn't have to be time. But like, what is it that you're willing to sacrifice? And is that your happiness? Is that something which you're not really paying attention to? And I say this because ultimately the work-life balance comes down to you and your preferences. So when you look at having to earn your stripes by cleaning kit and things like that, and you're thinking, oh, this is not what the job I signed up for. Like, this is exactly the job you signed up for. Because the job you sign up for I think the difference is people sign up for a job thinking that they're going to be at the end when they haven't even started, right? So they see the end goal, they see the end online trainer who's really popular, they see the personal trainer who's real like popular, got clients every single day, but they don't see the work that goes up to that and the sacrifice that goes up to that. And I think that's maybe like, again, I said about the struggle, but I think that's probably could be a lot of reasons why people do struggle to, well, that's not my job. Like,
yeah, 100%. So there was like a little bit of a story that kind of almost relates to that a little bit. It wasn't cleaning kit; it was actually training somebody. But I used to get up, and this is not even a lie. I used to get up at 2:50 a.m. 3 times a week to get to the gym to train a client who could only train at basically 4:45 a.m. So I used to get up at that time, so it gave me enough time to, and I used to get up at that time because I had some integrity, and obviously still do, but I had integrity and respect to turn up to that session in good appearance. So I would get up at that time to make sure that I had time to shower, I had time to obviously dress appropriately, I was clean, I was washed, I'd eaten, I was awake. So I turned up to that session ready to go, rather than waking up to that session 15 minutes before it starts, turning up late with a jacket half on and like looking like you've just woken up. So I turned up ready to deliver a session. But anyway, and 2:50 a.m. in the morning, and people are just like, why are you doing this? And eventually, so this person that I used to train used to be, I don't know if she's anymore, but she was the director of a very large hospital in the UK. And after a good number of months of working together, I essentially ended up getting referrals from knee surgeons who their first priority wasn't to operate. Like if they could fix the issue without an operation, then they would. The amount of referrals I got from those people through those connections, but I only got those connections because I used to meet this person so early in the morning to train them, built a relationship with them. So it's kind of like, I've literally just Googled it actually and pulled it up on here because it relates to some of the stuff that we're talking about. There's that quote from Thomas Edison, which I think is a really good quote, which is, opportunity is missed by most people because it is dressed in overalls and looks like work. And nowadays, people don't want to put in the work. They just want it handed to them.
Yeah. And that whole thing of like, when I first started and I was having the conversation, I had the conversation with my partner, with my family, and I said, like, I'm probably not going to be around that much because I'm training a guy. So I trained a guy, I had to get in the gym for five every morning. And like the benefit was my gym was like 3 minutes away from me. But I used to get up and get down to the gym for 5. We used to train, and I wouldn't be home till like 8, half 8 at night sometimes, and I'd be eating, and then at that time I'd still be programming. And my parents, my partner, they all thought I was crazy. Like, why are you doing that? And I think that thing of hard work is very individual. That thing of what work are you willing to put in is very individual, because if you asked me to do that for my old job, I'd be pretty fucking livid.
Yeah. I do think that's it. Like, I'm willing to put in these hours because I'm incredibly passionate about what I do. And
like you said, the credibility, like you put in that time, you put in that effort and that work because you want to be credible as a coach, and you've got like a standard to uphold. People
will recognize that. And as a gym owner and as an employer now, I would absolutely, hands down, and I have this conversation with another guy who's a very good friend who also owns gyms. We have this conversation a lot. I would absolutely 100% employ somebody who was, I would employ somebody who is interested in working, interested in becoming a coach, who currently wasn't even qualified, but who shows that they are incredibly reliable and have a work ethic that cannot be matched. Because I can teach somebody how to coach.
Yeah.
I can't teach somebody to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and be willing to be here, cold, wet, rain, whatever.
That's the mad thing, isn't it? Because like, I don't know where that comes from, because for me, I always wondered like, well, how do people have this work ethic? Like, one of my mates used to work fucking like 13 hours a day, right? In the rain, in the cold, doing like scrap metal stuff, and I used to be like, why are you doing that? Like in my head, I was like I would get up and I'd be feel like shit and I wouldn't want to go, and I'd be like one of these people that's like, how do people go to the gym at 5 a.m. and train? Like I couldn't ever work it out. And the more I got into like my training, the more I started to enjoy my training. I went from training after work to then training in the mornings to then working in the industry, getting up stupid hours just to come in and train people.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't until the light bulb went on that like, well, it's at that point, it's nothing to do with like, for me personally, it obviously it comes down to your character, but like that integrity, but that discipline and having the reason behind why you're doing it, like why you're getting up that early, why you're working that hard, why you're putting in those hours is very important. Because like I don't do it because I like training. Do you know what I mean? Like I don't do it because I love a bicep curl, even though I do love a bicep curl. Like
who doesn't?
I get up because there is something I'm trying to do, and doing something more. I feel like having a goal, having a goal in sight that you're aiming for is very important with this.
Yeah, absolutely. So I do think, like, obviously we're trying to drive home and drill home that work ethic, and you can't. I think the fitness industry, and this relates to training as well, and probably a lot of other things in life. But they reward patience. Like, so put in the work, put in the hard work, do it for a long period of time. That will get noticed, and that will be rewarded. You can't teach character. You can't teach work ethic. People have either got it or they haven't. Having said that, like, I do think, and again, it depends on where people are in their life. So when I was, in my 20s, I had no dependence, didn't have a child, had nobody like really depending on me. Like, so yes, I had family members and friends and those kind of things who mean a lot to me. And yeah, there are times where I've missed out on a lot of stuff because of work. But there are also times where I've been able to do really nice things for my family and friends because of work. So it swings and roundabouts. But I guess, like, as you get older, and I think you touched on it earlier, it depends on your priorities. Whereas now, I will still work incredibly hard, but I do have other priorities in terms of I do want to be able to spend more time at home because now we have a child and those kind of things. And he is without a doubt the most important thing.
He's the driving force now for you.
Absolutely. So there is time where I do want to spend more time at home, and that now becomes a priority. So organization and organizing your day, I think, especially as a personal trainer and somebody coming into the industry, is key, because the day is so dynamic. Like, we've had this conversation before, but like, and yours is very similar. But our days are set up so that, and honestly, if I don't know, let's say I've got a task to complete in my day that involves me leaving the gym and going somewhere. So it might be, so this afternoon, as an example, I need to go to the post office. If on my way back from the post office, I kind of like bump into somebody that I know and we have like a 10-15 minute conversation, genuinely, that's my day. Like, pretty much.
Yeah.
Like, my schedule is that tight. It's like,
yeah. I'm with you 100%. Like, I was last night, so I was, it was 8:30. I turned my laptop off, I think. 8:30, 9:30. What would it have been? I got into bed and I got to work this out. 8:30, I think. 8:30, I turned my laptop off, and I've been working since 6 that day. So I've been like editing videos and getting things ready, doing programming. And when I turned my laptop off, like, I was like, I could have probably, I didn't get everything I needed to get done that day.
mm-hmm.
And that was because I had 3 t-shirts to give to people. And that turned into 10-minute conversations. That's half an hour gone. And
yeah.
I know that doesn't seem like a lot to people, but like, when you are trying to get a lot of stuff crammed in, and this kind of rolls off into, be realistic with what you're trying to do, what you want to achieve, and is it feasible with the amount of time you have available? Because yes, you may have a really good work ethic, but if you say you're going to do 1,000,000 things in a day, you're probably not going to get that done.
Yeah.
We fall into that trap all the time.
Yeah, and there's a difference and a link between working hard and working smart. Like, you can still work hard but be smart with your work. So I know for a fact, like, you know, I use a diary. I use a pen and paper diary. I'm a pen and paper person. I don't really. I use like a laptop and stuff, so program and everything else, but I use pen and paper to make lists. I use pen and paper as a diary. I use pen and paper to log my own training. And I know for a fact, if I'm really religious with how productive I am using like the task components of my diary, then my days are way more productive. Especially if, like you just said, I'm realistic with what I do. So I always try and set myself a target of there's 3 relatively large things that I'm trying to achieve within a day. So there's 3 almost non-negotiables, and then there's maybe 1 or 2 other things on side of that, which if I get them done that day, great. If I don't, it's not the end of the world. And if I set myself that target, so there's 5 things, so 3 non-negotiable things to do, and then potentially 2 other options if I get to them, then wicked, then I've had a productive day.
Yeah. I think that's a really good thing to start to take note of how long things take as well, because it's very easy to write 3 tasks down and think, well, I've got 3 tasks down, like I can finish them. But if they're 10-minute tasks, like you're going to get a lot more done that day. So it's
of course
being realistic with that as well. So one of the things I want to just quickly go back to was, like, we've said that you need to be realistic with it, and I want to just highlight that you need to understand why you're making the decision that you're making. And I don't know whether it's because of your values, but I feel like our values drive us a lot. And when I say values, I'm talking about like there's 2 different types of values. There's the values that we hold, and the values that we actually do. So like the fact that you could say you're a loyal person, but if your actions show otherwise, you're probably not a loyal person, right? So you have your values which you stay true to on a daily basis, almost unconsciously. But then you have the values you're striving towards, and you have the values that you want to uphold. And I feel like life is that little bit in between. Life is that gap between being who we are and being who we want to be, right? So for me, when I was asked, why are you getting up at 4:30 to go and train someone? Like, why are you doing that? Like, for me, it was like, I have no other choice. And the reason was because for me, continuous improvement is a value which I constantly want to I want that to be one of my values. So continuous improvement for me, like, how can I get to that? But if you're not going to put the work in, then I'm not going to be able to get to that value. And I feel like you need to understand why you're doing something, and starting with what are my values and what values do I want to have is a very good place to start for me personally.
But I think you just touched on a really good point there, which I think is really important. It's kind of like you put yourself in a position in terms of you left your old job and went 100% into the fitness industry, and put yourself in a position where you had no choice. You're just like, right, this is now how I earn a living, and this is how I make money. Like, I have no choice. Yeah. Whereas if people come into the fitness industry kind of, I'm going to say part-time, and are trying to balance 2 jobs, an example, like balance their job in the fitness industry, balance another job. I would actually probably advise that most people do that, because obviously you
take that financial stress away.
Yeah, you take that little bit of stress away. But there's going to become a point where it's just like, for you to take it to the next level, it's just like, right, well, we're going all in now.
Yeah.
Feet first.
You sink or swim time.
Yeah.
That's how I got good at my old job. Was they'd send me to jobs. I have no idea what I'm doing. Yeah. And I'd have to figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it, mate. But I think so many people now are kind of like of a mentality of just like, well, I don't want to figure it out. I'll either blame somebody else, or I'll pick up the phone and just be like, I can't do it. Like,
yeah, this is where extreme ownership really plays like the value you get from extreme ownership. And what extreme ownership is taking full responsibility for the problem and the solution. So if the buck stops with you, you have no choice but to sort it out. And sometimes there could be external factors that like maybe got in the way. Like for example, what could be an example? Say you were supposed to meet someone, right? And they never turned up to your meeting. And you're like, that person's blithering idiot, they never turned up to a meeting. Well, yes, that person never turned up. But if you use extreme ownership in this point, you go, well, did I text them or did I call them an hour before to confirm that the meeting was going ahead? Because you thinking that person's arrogant, that person's ignoring you, could actually just be that person thought it was tomorrow. So if you confirmed and took ownership of that problem, then the solution all comes from you. If they say, oh, I thought it was tomorrow, well, you've got an hour to work that out. Do you know what I mean? You've got given yourself time. And you've actually decided that, well, I'm probably not going to just wait for this person to slip up. I'm going to take the ownership. And taking that ownership on yourself when it comes to problems and comes to solutions is really important, especially when it comes to like the fitness industry, because the buck does stop at you. When you're self-employed, you have no other choice. You have to do everything for yourself.
And I think a lot of people have that mentality and kind of like I think we've had this conversation before. They're just like, don't bring me problems. Like, bring me solutions.
Yeah. Solutions, like, and like, if solutions are wrong, it's better than just having a problem with no answer.
Yeah.
Because you can explore from wrong solutions. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm very much someone who, I just feel like a solution-based approach is not only like important, but it's necessary to actually grow. Like, if you keep coming with problems and you don't take ownership for your shit, like, what do you do? Like, where are you gonna grow? How do you grow?
Exactly. Like, you only grow in uncomfortable positions.
Exactly,
without a doubt.
And if you've always, and which is why kind of like the sink or swim thing's such an important thing. Like, my brother said to me once when he left the police that he turned around, his like boss at the time turned around and said like, well, I hope it works out for you. And his response was, it has to.
Yeah.
And that mentality will get you so fucking far. And it just kills me that people think like a work-life balance is like an arbitrary number. It's something you can like actually put value towards. You can't. And that's because a work-life balance doesn't exist when you're driven by something deeper than just working a 9 to 5. And I mean 9 to 5. When I say 9 to 5, I put brackets like a job you fucking hate. And I don't mean that everyone who is in a 9 to 5 hates a job. What I mean by that is if you're in a job that you are passionate about, and that could be a 9 to 5, that you really feel like the business you're in is a real valuable business, they're striving towards something important, and you really see value in what you're doing, then you're probably going to put in a lot more effort and a lot more work. Even within that 9 to 5 time, you're probably going to work smarter, but even outside of that, you'll probably put in extra effort. And that's because you're working for something important. And as soon as you try to do something more than the norm, when you decide to make that switch of going, right, I'm working a job, no, now I'm actually trying to build a career and build a life, that's the difference.
Yeah.
Your work then becomes your life.
Yeah. And I think the other thing of like, so, we're banging on about kind of working all these long hours, and that is true. We do work very long hours. But also in the back of my mind, I think one thing that really drives me to potentially work more is, if you're working a 9 to 5 and you're at your desk and you're doing your job and you're just like constantly clock watching. Oh, is it 5 o'clock yet? No, it's 9:05. And but I do put in all these hours, but in the same breath, if I wanted to right now, if I wanted to end this podcast, leave and go home, there are very little consequences.
Please don't do that.
But there are very little consequences. Yeah. So who have I got to answer to?
Yeah.
So the reality is, I do put in all this work. I do work incredibly long hours. Do like regularly put in, 80, 85 hour weeks easily. But at any point during my working week, if I just wanted to stop and go home and sit on the sofa and do naff all, I absolutely can.
And the work ethic that you've had has led you to the point that you now have the luxury of being able to do that.
if obviously I can't because of coronavirus, but if we were outside of coronavirus, and what day are we on? Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
Tomorrow, I wanted to go to Spain for 4 days. I could drive to Heathrow this afternoon.
And the reason that's important is because that is all self-built. That is all because of a work ethic and putting the effort in. And this 9 to 5 that doesn't exist is not been abide to, because the life you make is all based on the work you put in, which is why I think it can be really confusing. Like, yes, probably people need a work-life balance when they're working a job they're not too passionate about. Yes, they probably need a work-life balance when they're not wholeheartedly in that job. Because if you work, what is it? That's a third. Like, I know obviously it's not because of like when you're in school and when you're retired, but it's like a third of your life work, right? If that's just working 8 hours a week, 8 hours a day, it's like a third of your life, or just under that, maybe a quarter of your life it takes up. So a quarter of your life spent doing something that you're not necessarily passionate about. Like, what's the trade-off? And is the trade-off that you get paid a good amount of money so that other time of the like 3/4 of your life, you get to go and do whatever you want? Which I think is a great trade-off, by the way. Like, I think the trade-off of being able to earn enough money to be able to go and do what the fuck you want is brilliant. But like, on the same breath, if you put extra work in, like, could you do that sooner? Could you get control of your own life? Could there be some ambition there? And that ambition that you have to give you something more in the future. And it comes down to, again, the same thing with fitness, the same thing with trying to gain muscle, to lose weight. The long game's the best game. And sacrificing the short-term gains for the long term is very important.
Yeah. But I think even not just the financial reward, like, you know, that example of me, just like if I wanted to go into Spain tomorrow, not even from a financial point of view, that wasn't trying to be a brag of like financially I can do that. It was more about how you value time. Because you can always make more money. You can always make money. But you can't always get time back. So my point being where, like, yeah, I put in all these hours and I do sacrifice certain things. But at any given moment, if there is something that I really value and there is a specific time window that I really value, like, well, I ain't working.
Yeah.
Like, so it's not even like necessarily a financial freedom point of view. It's kind of like I literally have the ability every 7 days of a working week to work whenever I want to work and not work whenever I want to work. Yeah, there might be some consequences to those actions at certain times, because like there will be a financial consequence to that if I just like take the mick with it. But it's that time freedom which is more important, because that has to be your most valuable asset.
So I think people that are driven by money get that very confused, and I think that's why I don't think people are necessarily wrong, because a lot of people who are driven by money are very successful, but it's one of those things that people who are trying to lose weight kind of come across is when they get to their end goal, well, what now? And I think that time thing's very important, and that's ultimately why I made this change. That's ultimately why I joined the fitness industry. Was I worked in Cornwall for I don't know, months and months and months. So I drive 8 hours a day and think about what I could do with those 8 hours. And that was the constant thing going through my mind, was this: I'm wasting my time sat in a van.
So, but the good thing that I like about that is, weirdly, the amount of time that you now, quote unquote, work compared to the amount of time that you worked then. You probably work more now.
I definitely work more now.
But you have more time.
Right. How does that work?
Boom. Mic drop.
And but that is because if I wasn't up at 6 a.m. this morning writing programs, then I wouldn't have the freedom to be able to do what Mark does and to be able to like choose my own day. And I understand that if you work in a job where you aren't you aren't self-employed, you ultimately have to answer to people, and you ultimately have to do stuff for other people, and you have a contract that you're signed into, which is completely fine. And maybe that work-life balance is very valuable for you then. That work-life balance is ultimately all so individual, and that's the point we're getting at, is that at times when Mark puts in 80, 90 hours a week, it's because he gets to choose now what he does with his time. And that time that he put in when at a young age, maybe, then that's the crucial moment. And that's the thing I want you to think about, is like, where are you in your current life? And what do you want to achieve? Like, what do you want from your life? Because it doesn't matter what age you're at, you still have a lot of time to kind of figure things out and make a change in the right direction for you. Like, put more time into doing some kind of hobby on an evening, or trying to study on an evening. Maybe you're a scaffolder and you want to be a bricklayer. Well, go and do a bricklayer course on an evening and go and put in those extra hours. So then you can start to get more freedom in the future over your life. The one benefit about living in this Western society is that we ultimately have the choice of what we do. And I know it doesn't feel like that a lot of times because of responsibilities elsewhere. And that is where how much you value time really plays a big role in this now. Because that time, are you going to spend it sat in front of the TV? Or are you going to spend that time researching, learning, educating yourself to give yourself a better opportunity in the future? Anyone who's good and succeeded at something, anyone who's good with money, anyone who has a successful career, anyone who's famous, they at some point have had to sacrifice the now for the future.
Yeah, mate. Like, I think half the problem that we have, certainly in this country, is the fact that like people have too many options. Like
paralysis by analysis.
Like, do you know what I mean? Like, let's take kind of coronavirus as an example. One thing that drives me insane about this whole coronavirus thing. Yes, there have been times where I've also found it tough, and it's not a walk in the park, and you know, our businesses have been impacted in some negative way at some times. You know, some of them positively and others. But, you know, there's been some implications. My family lives a long way away. Kate's family lives a long way away. So our parents seeing our son and like their grandchildren, those kind of things has had implications. So it hasn't been easy. But like, one thing that like annoys me more than anything is when people are like, oh, we're having our freedom taken away. Mate, you've got more freedom than like
so many people.
Let's go to another country and let's see how much freedom you've got.
Yeah.
And see how your freedom's been taken away. Like, it's the amount of privilege that we have is unbelievable. And unfortunately, the amount of privilege that we have has probably caused like some of the stuff that we've spoken about, in terms of the fact that, you know, struggle to find hardworking, reliable people.
And a lot of that is because of everyone feel like, a lot of people feel entitled to things and entitled to like a way of life and a way of living, which ultimately, depending on which way you look at it, is true in a certain sense. But like, my point is with this, when it comes to the work-life balance, is like, if you don't want to work, then you don't have to. You have the choice to do that. But there are consequences to that. So when you look at your options of things, like, weigh up your options. And a lot of times you're probably not even like, I wouldn't say you're lazy on, a lot of times a lot of people are, but you're probably just uninspired. So if you're uninspired, find something that inspires you. Find something which you can start to feel passionate about and you want to put the work into. And that comes back to that passion thing of like, no, you don't necessarily have one, but why? Let's switch the word. Not passion, but purpose. What is your purpose? Why do you go to work? What is the reason for that? Now, is that because you value happiness and you want to be happy and buying shoes makes you happy? That's absolutely fine. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter. But start to have a purpose and have something which really does drive you, because that entitlement and feeling like everyone owes you something and feeling that you're either a victim to like the certain state, like, show a bit of gratitude every now and again and see how much that changes your life.
Yeah. And also, you just touched on like kind of people saying, a lack of options and those kind of things. And this is true for, I think, both work and certainly true for exercise and nutrition from a training point of view. Like when you think you've exhausted all of your options, I guarantee you haven't.
Yeah.
I guarantee I could find you more options.
I know this is taking it really quite dark, and I never meant to, but it makes me quite laugh how people see no other options.
Yeah.
So there was a story, I can't remember, not too long ago, my mum was telling me. So I can't remember I'll have to find out what it's called, but it's basically a story about this woman who kept her child and said that she was ill. So would get all free healthcare and would basically get a free house and basically convinced everyone this child couldn't walk and would tell this child not to walk and would abuse her. And basically, long story short, this kid ends up getting her boyfriend to kill her mum, right? So because she couldn't see any way out.
Yeah.
And we're just like, why don't you go and why don't you call your dad? You speak to your dad every day. Why don't you tell him what's going on? And then start to kind of find another way out other than that. And I think that, like you say, there are always other options. You just need to find them.
Yeah. Yeah. I got a slightly less dark story.
Yeah, please.
Where I had a conversation with my stepdad about a very similar topic. And he was like, so he's a transport manager, logistics manager. And he's like, oh, we were talking about a similar thing and people coming with problems as opposed to solutions. And he said one day he had a phone call from a driver. And was like, I've got a flat tire. What should I do? I mean, that's less dark than your story, but same thing really. What do you mean? What should I do?
Yeah.
Go and fix it.
You have an option. And
and then it was responding so he was just like, well, go to Sainsbury's. He's like, well, where's Sainsbury's? Well, my Google works the same as your Google.
Yeah.
That's one thing that annoys me.
People that can't think for themselves.
Yeah. Well, how do I get here? And if people ask me that, I genuinely Google it and I send them the screenshot of me Googling it to try and drive the point home where it's just you're just too lazy to Google it yourself.
So being, again, extreme ownership, being responsible, being credible, being honest, and all of these things goes into your work ethic, because a lot of times it may not just be because you're bored. It may just because you're lazy. But what is it? Try and work it out and be honest with that. I want to just bring on a few other points. Don't ever feel guilty for your work-life balance, whatever it is. Because if you're like us and you work stupid amounts of hours because you're trying to do something more or you're trying to do something different, don't ever apologize for that. The thing is we all love, you'll be sat in a room with people admiring a football player, admiring a singer, admiring someone who's famous, or admiring a business person, and in the next breath they'll tell you that you're putting in too much effort and you're putting in too much work. And that is because a lot of times people's own insecurities about what they're doing, and a lot of times that's because their life and your life is completely different. So whatever work-life balance works for you is probably the ultimate thing that I'd say. Every single time we have this conversation or have a conversation, it all resorts to make your fucking self happy. Do what works for you. Be consistent. What can you kind of sustain? Now, ask yourself those questions. There isn't a blueprint.
No, not at all. Not at all.
So ultimately, it could seem a bit doom and gloom, the conversation, but I feel like today's just been exploring this topic of work-life balance. And like I said, there isn't a blueprint for this. There isn't anything you can do to ultimately, there isn't a rule book to follow. It's just you have to work out what's best for you. And are you uninspired? And maybe do you need to go and get some inspiration, and maybe even just take a reality check that the job you're in, yes, it may not be the best job. It may not be what you want to do, but do you know what you want to do? If you don't, then working hard at that current job is only going to give you good results. It's only going to be the best option there. So start to take into consideration that the amount of work you put in is what you get out in all situations, whether you're self-employed or whether you're not. Because doing the right thing, working hard, and being like, just being honest with who you are really does start to get like, it bleeds over into every aspect of your life. So your work-life balance is really important because it needs to be specific for whatever it is that you're doing. Make that decision yourself. If you're getting into the fitness industry as well, like, don't be put off by this conversation, because I mean, don't be put off, but be realistic. Like, whatever you want to achieve is all down to you. If you are passionate about this and if you do really want to make it work, you'll make it work. You have the power, but just be realistic with whatever that is. Thank you very much for tuning in. This has been Real Coaching Radio. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode of the podcast. My name is Charlie. Me and Mark, we just want to thank you guys for tuning in. For all of you who are listening today, thank you so much. If you would like to, then please share it with your friends and family. If you know someone who wants to be a coach or someone who's into their training, please let them know about this podcast and tell them that there's a lot of good information in it. Probably not coming from me, but certainly coming from Mark, I guess. I like to probably go off on too many rants, and there are a lot of things that I get quite passionate about when I talk, so apologies about that. I do want to do some shameless plugs, actually. So I'm going to shameless plug the Origin Series Instagram page. Origins, you can find Origin Series, Origin_Series_online, and they post a lot of good information and talk about a lot of kind of different topics which may get your interest. One of the topics they talked about most recently was like regress to progress. Basically, you might have to go backwards to go forwards. They talk about auto-regulation, the kind of goals versus the process. There's a lot of things on there which can be quite inspirational and quite nice to look at, quite nice to give you some, I guess, guidance along the journey of health and fitness. You can also go to their website as well. Same thing, Origin Series Training. If you type that in on the internet, I will tell you the exact. Give me 2 seconds. It is origin-series.com. If you head there, you will be able to find kind of a load of different information. So they run an educational course. They also do online training. They also do one-to-one personal training. Also, we have a gym. The gym is called Origin Athletic. Now, this is in the center of Bristol. It is an elite functional fitness facility, and it, in my opinion, is one of the nicest environments I've ever trained in. The members here are kind of unbelievable, if I'm honest with you. I've never met a group of people who are so driven by the same thing. And a group of people that are so welcoming as well. It's quite strange to actually see that. As in most gyms, you can sometimes get the people with the egos, and probably, to be fair, the most egotistical person in this gym is me. So come say hello, come and see how egotistical I am. That's a joke, by the way. I try to check my ego quite a lot. I do want to say thank you, though, once again, for tuning in. Thank you so much for supporting us. And like I said, if you can, give us a 5-star rating on iTunes. That would be great. That would be amazing. If you are listening on Spotify, then share it. Let people know that you're listening. Share it to your friends. Share it to your family. If you're still listening, this is also great. I'm also going to say about another podcast I listen to. So I listen to a podcast called the Jocko Podcast. And the outros on the Jocko Podcast are so long. Like, the podcast would be a 3-hour podcast, and the last half hour to 45 minutes is his co-host Echo, just basically mumbling off about things you can buy to support the podcast. The best way to support this podcast is honestly to share it with your friends and family. The more people that know about it, the better it is for us, and the better it is for the fitness community, I guess. Coaching can be a difficult thing. Learning how to progress through the fitness industry can be difficult if you're a coach, or even if you're just someone who likes training. And the information we give on here is hopefully to help the general public. So if someone is just starting out on their journey, like I said, please share it. Thank you, thank you, thank you. This has been Real Coaching Radio.